Oh, the fun one. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I chose this subject, dealing with students who push your buttons, because it's something that we all identify with, either the students or their own children or anyone that's around you. And to me, it's a fascinating subject because adolescents are a really interesting kind of self-contradictory group. At the same time that they're striving for independence and individuality, they're also striving to be part of a peer group, which kind of works as kind of one way or the other. And oftentimes, what I've discovered with most young people is that they're sometimes they want to look for control and power, but sometimes they're just expressing their anger. And sometimes the anger is, they're not even sure what the anger is. Is it something inside them, something in the environment, or something of the sort? And so why that's important is that we all of us, even us as adults, need some way in some way to express our anger. Some of us do it by kicking things or yelling. Some of us do it by going out and working out, or taking a long walk, or whatever it is that we kind of get rid of that anger. And so that's really kind of important that they have that too. And so when we're working with children and working with adolescents and students, it's really kind of important to remember that that's what a lot of times was happening. So if I ask a student, for example, I use my kids for example, if I ask my son, if my son says, "Dad, some of my friends are going to go, and we're going to go to a concert in California, and we're going to stay in a car overnight there, and then come back and then stay overnight on the road in a car also," then I'm going to say probably, well, no, you can't do that. Particularly the kids like 14, 15 years old. And then I was in exactly that situation. They want to go to California for a concert. All right, so I say no, and then his response to that was what I call blowing and rolling his eyes, okay? So now I have a choice to make at that point. I've already got the behavior in compliance. Is it worth going that next step and say, don't roll your eyes at me? Because now we're in a whole nother argument, okay? And so I realized that adolescents, young people, that's what they do. Okay, they were trying to resist. They're trying to find out where they live at, who they're trying to be. And it's really kind of important. Oftentimes when we're dealing with kids who are pushing our buttons, it has to do with the young person, but it has to do with us also. And that is where these buttons come from. And a lot of times these buttons are coming from our childhood and from our adolescence ourselves. Or, darn it, my father made me do this and you're going to do it too. And so, which means I didn't like it, but why should you be happy? And so we put that out onto the kids. And unfortunately, for young people, and I guess I should give these things out. These are what's these things called? Handouts. Generally, they're just trying to find out where they belong, who they're trying to be. And so I have this definition of buttons. And buttons reveal themselves when the past amplifies the present, and we feel confused by our strong reactions, even at times when, like a kid ourselves. Few responsibilities are tougher or elicit more childhood memories than serving as a parent, either directly or as a surrogate. And the reason I put that there is because even though we're not parents to these children, we are in a position of being parents. Because they look at us as role models, and a lot of times these kids come from environments in which the parents were just dysfunctional, maybe even harmful to them. So when they get here, and we may be the first adults that are safe for them. And the safe doesn't mean I give you your way all the time. Safe means I'm consistent with you, and I'm being supportive as you try to grow. And so there are kids who come to my office all the time who say, "Doc, I need to talk to you." And I'm like, "Well, you need an appointment." And I'm like, "If you're not going to talk to me, then I'm going to go kick a wall." I'm like, "Okay, well, go kick the wall." And I'm doing that not because I don't have time to see them, but because they need to learn that the world does not jump based upon this is my need for the day. And that's what we all have to learn. If you're going to go through the world thinking that things are supposed to respond based upon your time, you're going to get your feelings hurt a whole bunch of times. Okay, and so that's an important lesson for them to learn to delay. And so for a lot of times when young people want to see me, I will make them wait at least a week. unless I hear that there's some harm going on. I'll make it like a week, and then they come back and say, well, what's going on? Well, doc, last week this was going on. I said, so what did you do between last week and today that you're still okay? Well, I went and played basketball with my boys, and we played some pool. Oh, cool. Go play basketball with your boys and play some pool. That's one of the ways of coping. And so, again, we're trying to help them learn how to be adults and positive, responsible adults. And so I have a vignette here. The staff member says, you need to stop playing video games and do what you're supposed to be doing. Haven't cleaned up your room yet. You've been promising to do it for the last 2 hours. The student says, I'm right in the middle of this game. Why do I have to help clean this damn room? And why are you only picking on me? You want it clean so bad, then why don't you clean it or hire somebody else to clean these funky rooms? And again, that's it. I'm tired of you talking back. I'm writing you a case note. Obviously, you don't want to be here. And write your damn case note. Who cares? Write 100 of them if you want to. Just get off my back. Or I'll get you to the room if you shut up. If you'll set you up. Student mumbles something under the breath, and as they depart, slams the door. And I see here at Cascades, but I see it everywhere in all my career, that the staff will use their case notes almost like as a whip. I'm going to write a case note on you. And if you're a kid, after a point, it gets to a point, so write it. Here's a pen. they're going to get smart ass with you and do that. And so now it becomes personal. We've taken it on personally, as opposed to, look, let's back off, okay? And this is something you do in your adult. Hey, let's back off. Let's come back in a half an hour and do it again. And all of us have been in that situation. There have been times that I've been so mad at my spouse. I'm thinking, I'm going to bury you in the backyard. I'm tired of talking to you, right? And then I go and take a walk around the block. And by the time I get back around, I'm like, why was I tripping about? It wasn't really that important, And so sometimes it's just in the heat of the thing, we get in this battle with these kids, and they're going to win. They're going to win because they just have more energy. Okay, we just, just do it, man. But they just go on and on and on. Okay, so when you go into those power struggles, we call it seeing red, and the adrenaline rushes, your muscles tighten, palms sweat, voices changing, and you look really, if you really look at yourself, I'm not sure if you look in the mirror, when you really look angry and pissed off, you're pretty ugly. Okay, and it's like, and you're like this, and the kids say, okay, see you later. And now you're all the way up here, and your blood pressure is up, and so forth. It happens to all of us. And so what do we do when students talk back? In this environment, what I do with students all the time is that no one has forced you to come here. Period. If you don't want to be here, don't be here. Go pack your stuff and go. And I think it's a good perspective and a strategy to have, because first of all, it lets them know we're not controlling you. Secondly, you're the person who's deciding what your future is going to be. You're a young adult. I can't make you do this thing. And so ultimately, you have to make decisions in your own life. And when you do that, and there are a lot of times, what I see when the kids leave here, we get phone calls all the time about that. I messed up. Can I come back? Because they find out it's just not that rosy out there. I mean, there's been kids that have been coupled up here who are like, we're going to go out, we're going to move to Idaho, and we're going to get, and she's pregnant, and we're going to, he's going to work at McDonald's. It ain't happening. There's no way you work at McDonald's on half shift and support a spouse, kid, apartment, car, all of that. It takes time, it takes money, and in order to do that, you need a career. You need some skills, and unfortunately, people don't hear that. I work also at the prison in Monroe. I just had a conversation with a guy who's like 50 years old now, been inside since he was 20, has no skills. I mean, nothing. And I said, well, construction's hiring all over Seattle. But he said, no, man, I gotta get up early in the morning. I don't feel like going early in the morning. Like, okay, we're done talking. because now I'm spinning with you. He'll probably go out and hit somebody in the head and come back to prison and be comfortable there. And so the issue is with young people here, are you willing to take control of your life? I know you're talking all this smack now, but you're really ready to control your life and move forward. And so I have a tendency to put it back on them. I don't like my blood pressure being up. So you want to be mad, be mad. I'm walking away. We'll come back and deal with it later. Okay? We have a security team also, so if they get completely out of pocket, you can always call security and say, we'll deal with you one way or the other. Okay. So what is the label on that button on your chest? If the person's pushing your button, what is that button? Is the button about self-esteem? Is it a button about people not respecting you? Is it a button about when I was a kid, my parents pushed me down all the time? A lot of us grew up in a generation in which at least I did, I got my butt whooped. Okay? I mean, I'm not so I think in those days now, people talk CPS, my mother would have been in prison. Okay? Because they were knocking us out back in the day. Okay? And you just learn to at least be sneaky about it. Okay? And so now if the kids don't have that, they even threaten you with it. I'm going to call CPS and so forth. And so now it's a matter of how do you get them in control of themselves? Because they're not really being adults yet. They're still being kids, but they're just kind of confused. What's happening with me? And a lot of it is just role modeling. That we role model, this is how adults behave. This is how adults interact with each other. One of the things I see here on campus that's really very good, I don't see a lot, maybe because I'm in my office all the time, I don't see a lot of conflict between staff. People seem to respect each other. People communicate well, and that's what I see. And so it's good for the students to see that if we're walking across campus talking to another staff person, we're like, well, your mother, that's not cool, but I don't see that. And so that role model helps a lot of these kids. There's some children that could hear who blow out pretty quickly, and they blow out because they try to recreate the dysfunction they had at home here. And so they come here, they come from a gang involved place, they come here and try to be gangsters. Or they come from somewhere that there was a lot of sexual abuse, they come here and there's overreaction and the boundaries are bad sexually. Because people do what's familiar to them, even if it doesn't work for them. That's what I know. And so they try to recreate that. And so the issue is that we can only serve as a role model for them and then let them decide what you're going to choose one way or the other. But going back to the prison, I have a program with about 450 people there, and I would venture to say about 13 or 14 of them have been in Job Corps across the country. And each and every one of them says, Doc, I messed up, man. I was learning how to be a plumber or sheetrocker or whatever. I messed up bad. You know, and sometimes I wish I could have one of those people come up and talk to the kids and say, hey, look, dude, shut up. Do what you're supposed to do. Because you can learn some skills here from people who are professionals, who are there. And what I want to tell staff a lot of times, even if a young man or young woman is working with you or doing something with you in shops or whatever, they may be looking at you as a dad or a mom. It may be important to take 30 seconds out every once in a while to just sit down and say, man, how you doing? What's going on with you? You know, and so I just had a kid this morning, and he came in all sad. And I said, how you doing? He said, well, I have this disorder. And I'm like, how do girls treating you here? Oh, man, it's just, I'm not getting no rhythm at all. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Then we talked about that, and it was kind of, he was better. And I can go to all this clinical stuff and do all this medication. He just needed a dad or an uncle to talk to him. And so I call that just being real with people. Okay, stop me if you have any questions at all. Why sometimes we automatically react to things being pushed, the result of that button being pushed, what can I do about it? There are people who are very good at pushing our buttons, and they're most skilled at it. And sometimes it's our own partners that push our buttons, okay? And I hate you, you're such a loser staff. That's the kind of things that you hear from people all the time. I have these photos in here because I thought they were funny, but also recommend they also recognize how staff sometimes react. So, people telling you, you're not my mother, you're not my father, you can't tell me what to do. The biggest issue with looking at some things like pushing buttons is not to take it personally. We are part of a larger team. All right, and so, for example, let's say this man right here is in the hallway. He's having a problem with a student. I'm not going to just walk the other way or walk past that. I'm going to stop, stand beside him, a little bit behind him, and just stand there and just listen. And because what that does at some point, it dissipates that conflict. Now it's not just him one-on-one. Now there's another staff person here. Not that we're going to body slam the person, but that, okay, now so now it's that all that energy is being split off. And then most of the time the kid's going to say, oh, all you staff are stupid, and walk away. Okay, see you later. But eventually that student's going to come back and say, hey, I was wrong. And that's the time you talk about it, not when they're in the heat of that moment. And so because we have that team, that's really very important to do that kind of stuff, to talk to each other, support each other, and not take that stuff with us. You should not leave, in my opinion, this is related to pushing buttons, you should not leave here in stress. You come here, it's just a gig. That's all it is, it's a job. You come here, you do your 8, you go home, okay? If you're at home dreaming about this stuff, something's wrong. If it's your Sunday night and you're already thinking about, man, I gotta go back to damn Job Corps again, something's wrong. It's just a gig. You do your job, you go home. Be professional. And hopefully, move on to the next job if you need to. When you're dealing with kids, it's important to recognize that it's a power game. They want some power in that relationship because oftentimes they don't feel power. If you make a mistake, if you feel like you talk to them the wrong way, don't be afraid to apologize. That's the hardest thing for a lot of us. Sometimes I'll be in my car with my wife, and I will have said something or done something that I knew was out of pocket. And I'm driving down the highway, and I know I'm wrong, and I'm like, just say the words, dude. And they just say, and I got to force out. Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, am I the only one that does that? It's kind of like it's kind of hard thing to do, say I'm sorry. But once that's done, then we can move forward. Because I've known people who've kept anger for years at each other. Okay, and so it's a matter. It's like what's the point of holding on to it? And even if you're right, so what? At the bottom line, you're affecting the relationship because you're right. And unfortunately, a lot of us come from those kind of environments and cultures and families that's important. I'm right and you're wrong, and that's all there is to it. Okay, all right. Walking away from the fight, I put down here, setting limits on that back talk, and giving some consequences, and consequences that make sense to kids. So I've heard parents and people say things like, "You're grounded for a year." Well, okay, how are you going to maintain that? You're just saying that because you're pissed, okay? And my understanding of consequences is that it's better to know those consequences before they actually do the behavior. Okay, so you're not just out there blind, you're out there making more sense. And so when I was raising my children, I would say to them, you're supposed to be home at 11 o'clock on the weekend. And if you're not home by 11 o'clock on the weekend, then you're grounded for 2 weeks. So when my boy came home at 16 years old at midnight, as soon as he walked in the door, he said, "I know, Dad, I'm 2 weeks." I got no problem with that. Okay, you made a decision, but don't come in here saying, "Oh man, the car broke down, go sneaking through the window," all that nonsense that many of us have done. Okay, just and I'm talking about that's how you learn to be an adult. That's what it is. It's just a consequence, and I call that manning up. He came up and said to me, "I know, I'm busted, but she was cute." Okay, fine, all right. You made a decision. Okay, you won't be seeing her for 2 weeks. Okay, but that's okay. I can live with that. Okay, and when we find ourselves just, that's what's going on inside ourselves. Is it really this kid's thing? Is he or she doing what kids do anyway? Kids do things like that. They try to sneak in the house at night. Don't be surprised if your teenager tries to do that. These kids here, they'll go out and they'll go drinking. Okay, they can't do that here legally. That's not okay. But that kids do it doesn't surprise me. Okay, and so we have to, of course, give them a consequence, and they need to be able to learn how to take it. And as opposed to, well, why can't I drink? I'm 20. Say, well, because you made a decision to be here, and part of being here is this. It's like coming to work and saying, well, I don't want to work today. I want to. Well, you made a decision to get a job here. There are ways you got to be in space with that. Okay, good. Controlling your reaction, avoid giving away your power, establishing clear boundaries with kids is very important. And when you're dealing with a group of kids, this is really important. When you're going to deal with a group of kids, focus on the leader. Okay? Deal with that person one-on-one as much as possible, because once you get that person in line, the rest of them will follow. But if I'm dealing with the weakest person in the group, at that time, I got to go through all of that. Okay, and I just learned that from working in group homes and so forth, that once I got the leader on my side, I'm good. Okay. The other major thing I want to say before we break up here is that giving students the choices are important, and getting them to be on the same team with you and say, look, we've miscommunicated, there was a problem, where did we go wrong? And just by saying, where did we go wrong, they may say, well, you came at me sideways, and okay, so how would I have said that? It would have been so much of a problem. And if it's reasonable, okay, let's try that. We can make changes. But if they're just wrong all the way through, say, man, we can't do that. We can't go that. Let's try something different. As opposed to, you're the kid, I'm the adult, obey. That doesn't work anywhere. Okay, there's a thing for notes here and beautiful pictures, and then I'll shut up and ask you guys, do you have any questions at all? What? Go ahead.
I guess staff one-on-one going on, and we step up behind them and kind of support. What, as a staff afterwards, we write an NIR automatically. Is that always the best approach?
No, not at all.
I don't think so either.
Not at all, and because I've heard there's a student support meeting, and on my calendar I put it down SS meeting, because it reminds me of Gestapo. Okay, we go in there, and it's like, he has 12 in our eyes, and is that working? I mean, sometimes, have you ever been involved with a kid, particularly a young adolescent, and you just change that whole energy? I used to work with kids in Chicago, and the best therapy I ever did was on a basketball court. Just sitting on the side of the line, waiting for the next game. I was a lot lighter then, and could hoop back in the day. But the point is, I've changed the energy, and now we're sitting there talking about basketball and Magic Johnson or whatever, and then it's a different relationship. I think that those just hitting them over the head with NIRs doesn't work all the time. It's good for our documentation. People feel better that you're not giving an NIR. The kid doesn't care. What does that mean?
So how do we?
It's almost like, it reminds me of what we call a M&M system. Back in the day, they used to have a point system where you're working bad kids, like in group homes, and at the end of you earn a certain number of points for your good behavior, and you can get. They had chocolate candy bars or whatever, and they were wondering why it didn't work. It didn't work because the kids didn't value chocolate candy bars. You have to give them something they value. Say, keep your Clark bar, dude. I don't want that. Okay, and so to me, we have to kind of talk to the kids about not just punishment, but how do we positively reinforce the behavior? What is it that you really want? What is it that you're trying to get? Okay, and so a lot of the times the kids here they tell me all the time, I feel like I'm in a concentration camp. We can't leave campus and so forth. Well, that's unfortunate, because they're young. What do young people do? They go to the mall, they hang out a little bit, and my perspective is, as long as they're not doing anything crazy, why can't they do things like that? Why can't they sit out here and talk and make, go use the fire pit out here, sit out there and just do marshmallows? And can we join with them? Okay, so one of the things that I think we need to do, for example, every once in a while I'll go over to play on Tuesday, do the pool tournament. Not because I can't beat them, but just to let them see staff in a different situation. Or sometimes I'll just take a walk on campus just to talk to people. I mean, we're trying to do our jobs too, but part of our jobs also is working with these kids. And some of that is just being visible. Because you can come into this building, you work in this building, and never leave this building. And sometimes you just got to walk out and do different things. I'm not sure that's really addressing your question or not, but I'm willing to hear another part of it.
Well, like you say, creating a relationship with students good. Sometimes I think the staff jumps to right in an hour too quickly instead of trying to back off. They maybe be approaching us.
Right. It's control, and it's like I'm going to have control. You're not going to have control, and it doesn't go anywhere. And kids are blown out of here because one more NIR. Well, what can you? What's the root of this behavior? Why is this kid acting this way? And maybe because if this may be the very first man in his life or her life that's not tried to hurt them. And I'm used to doing what I want to do, and worse, and used to being abused. So I'm going to keep pushing him, not because I'm trying to control. I'm pushing him to see how he's going to react. Is he going to hurt me like everybody else did? And so I've told kids that directly, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. You can come talk to me anytime. I'm not trying to get anything out of you. But I'm here for you, and I'm stable.
And that takes trial and error.
It takes trial and error, and it pulls away from kids. Most of the time, they deal with their own stuff as much as possible. We just see the knuckleheads. I mean, they see the kids who are difficult. Because sometimes I walk across campus, and I'm like, who are you? And they're like, oh, I'm this person. How long have you been here? About 3 months. I'm like, how do I don't know who you are? Because they're doing what they need to do. I get the knuckleheads. And or the people who are having problems who walk in. One girl, so funny, I went and saw, she was here a day. And I walked in and I said, we're going to talk about mental health. And then she ran out crying and said, when you say the word mental health, it triggers me. And okay, maybe you don't need to be here. Because if you're cutting on yourself because you heard the word mental health, you're not ready. And sometimes we got to recognize that. Everybody's not ready. And because they're not ready, we got to learn how to do in our lives the Heisman. That I got right now. I can't let you bring me down. And I try to tell other kids that also. There are people in your life who are positive. There are people in your life who can be constructive. I learned early in my life to learn how to stay sucker free. I don't have suckers in my life. so that's the notion of in those kids and staff the same way. I had to talk to one staff person who's no longer here. Like, man, dude, you use NIRs like they're like a pistol. It's like, man, I'm like Clint Eastwood, man, like walking in there, ching, ching, ching. I got my NRIs right here.
Did all right, 6 IR?
Yeah, exactly.
Only 5.
Yeah, exactly. You feel lunky pump? I mean, it's sometimes exactly like that. You're absolutely right. Other questions?
So if we don't focus on the NIR and we see egregious behavior that we need to, don't you think that some students might try to argue their way out of it because they've been on your good side now?
And I would expect that from them. I'm not saying don't use NIRs. I'm saying use it judiciously. And so that there's situations in which there's no question the person needs, it's a serious situation, you need to do that. The other ones, there's some other times I'm thinking, are we using it to really shape behavior, or are we using it to make us feel better? And so ultimately, to me, we need to shape behavior. However, if they're doing something egregious, no question about a body slam them. And hopefully that body slam will say, man, that'll give me a wake-up call. But after 3 body slams and they're not still doing the same thing, we got to change the method a little bit. That's not working. We got to come a different way. And I've learned over my lifetime there are at least 3 different ways of getting something done. It's like if we're hammers, we see everything as a nail. And so there are just different ways to get that job done, in essence.
The situation you've got here with the staff member and the student and turning off the television or the video game? What I hear from staff is it's not the student that pushes their buttons. It's that they only have the case note as their tool. So instead of being able to make a policy where the video games and the TVs aren't even turned on until everybody has cleaned their room, or to be able to walk in and turn the TV off, the video game on. That's not a tool. All they've got is case notes. That's the button.
Yeah.
That's the thing I hear over and over again. And I think it kind of ties in with the conversation and the questions that have been asked here.
And
What else have we got?
I agree with you completely. But in my opinion, this program like this needs to be evolved. And what I mean by that, you got to use it based upon what works. In other words, let's say these ways of looking at the world don't work. Let's adjust it a little bit. Let's adjust it a little bit, make it make sense. That sounds like a perfectly good idea to me. Let's come up with some rule that at this time this happens until everything else is done. Then you don't have to worry about that because the kids do it to each other. Hey man, dude, the reason we can't do this is because you're not taking care of your room. Knock that out. And now that takes us out of it. That's on you guys now. That's their own peer group. So when they come here initially, I tell them you're a cohort. You're peers. Some of these people in this room are going to be your colleagues 20 years from now. And so let's empower them by saying, you guys can take care of this. You guys do that. You guys do this, as opposed to wear the hammer all the time. Because I think punishment. There's hundreds and hundreds of studies that show that punishment does not work. Positive reinforcement is what works. That's what shapes behavior. And so somehow, but punishment is easier because you don't have to think about it. It's just, there it is, I wrote it, it's there.
So staying with the video game, where's the positive reinforcement there? Just for as an example.
What I would do to say with that kind of person is that I'd like you to pay to get video games. You can do that as much as you can, but let's knock these things out first. Let's knock these things out. Then the positive reinforcement is you play your video games and I'm not on your case. In fact, maybe I'll play them with you, but let's knock it out.
Okay. And if they don't stop the video game after that?
Then it's a matter of how we raised our child or how the child's been raised up to that point. Because that's an important thing, because that means we have to extinguish behavior that existed before that is now affecting what's going on now. And so the kid has to be told here, you're not at home. This is an environment in which you're learning to be a professional. And part of being a professional is taking care of business. And part of taking care of business is doing the things you need to do.
To me, that's the culture change.
It is a culture change, but that's the best culture.
Why you're here to be a professional.
And the best cultures are open to being changed, as opposed to just the way my daddy did it, his daddy did it before. That doesn't work. You know, we have, and that culture change is not just from us, but from the kids too. So that they hold the standard up. That they tell new kids coming in, I mean, we don't roll that way. Now, you and I working in the prison, and if you've ever been around prison people, it's very related to gender and race and so forth. But on my unit, I tell them we don't do that. On this unit, if you're black, white, green, whatever, you're going to be here, and we're going to get along, or I'm putting you back on the bus. Period. Okay, I'm the shot caller. And so what happens is that you get that people working with each other that you think wouldn't work together. The other day I saw a guy, he was straight up California, Aryan Brotherhood, big mustache, tatted up, he has swastikas, everything. He's in the room playing chess with a dude that was black gorilla family. You would never, ever see that anywhere unless someone says, we're changing that culture. And I'm saying we have that power to do that. We already do it. Everyone here is different. Okay, and this is a representation and a microcosm of like Seattle in the world. I don't sit there and say, she's a white female, I can't be acting out, talking to her. That's just silly. The issue is we're co-workers. And that's the world.
We're human beings.
Exactly. We're co-workers. And if you're going to go into the world of work, you can't be sitting around saying, I can't talk to that person, I can't deal with that person, I don't like the way they look, I don't like the way they dress, I don't like their sexual orientation, none of that. And so that's a culture that I think we need to create here, because that's what's going to work in the world. That's hard for people because a lot of times we grew up in very restricted areas. When I grew up in Chicago, it was all black, period. Okay, but that's not the world.
I grew up in Skagit County.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the world, you know. And unless you're not going to leave Skagit County, we got to adjust. I'm saying the same thing for the kids and for the staff. Other questions, comments? All right, I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes, and if you have any questions or you want to pay me some money or anything like that, that's we can.